Wait a minute. Oh, hello. All right, welcome back to Monty's Python show. Today we are doing the third video in our Warrior Glots tutorial series where we are exploring object-oriented programming in Python. And we've already created our Glots class in video 2, so if you haven't seen that, check out the second video in the series. And today we're going to create a subclass of Glot called the Warrior class. And we're going to learn a little bit about how the Warrior class inherits attributes and methods from the Glot class. So we're going to talk about inheritance, and that's going to be the key topic for today's video. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we've got our basic Glot class created. We've got a constructor method inside of our Glot class, and we've seen how we can create actual instances of the Glot class. We've created G1 and G2. Now what we want to do, let's create another class for a different type of Glot, which is a more specific Glot called Warrior. So we're going to create a new class called Warrior. And a warrior is a Glot who has gone through warrior training. So it's actually going to be a subclass of Glot. And we want our warrior class to inherit the attributes of a basic Glot, but it's also going to have some of its own more specific attributes. So the way that we tell Python that we want a new class to inherit from another class is we type the name of the parent class in parentheses. So warrior is going to be a subclass of the Glot superclass. So for now I'm just going to put pass in, and let's just talk about that nomenclature. So Glot is the superclass in this structure. It sits sort of at the top of our hierarchy, and within Glot there is a particular subclass of Glot called Warrior. And so this is the superclass, and a Glot is the superclass, and Warrior is our subclass. And we can see that Warrior is going to inherit information from the Glot class. We've instructed Python to do that by putting Glot inside of the parentheses of our class definition. Okay, so let's go ahead and give our Warrior some maybe some different class attributes. So when a Glot becomes a warrior, they become much stronger. They've done lots of strength training, and let's say they have strength level 2. Let's stop that. And they also get issued really great armor when they go through their training. So let's say that the warrior has armor level of 50. But of course, when a Glot becomes a warrior, their productivity goes way down to 0.2. So a warrior Glot is not great in the factory. They grow very large and muscular. They have super strong hands, and you try to get them to work in the factory or in the office, and they break the keyboards and all kinds of crazy things, and they poke holes in the whiteboard, and they're just not productive at all. But they're great at fighting. They're very strong and have tremendous armor. Okay, so we've got our class variable set up for a warrior. Now we need to go ahead and create our constructor method. So def dunder init, and remember the self as the first argument, and again name, clan, and now each warrior can train with a weapon that might be unique to that warrior. So we're gonna include an additional parameter in our constructor method called weapon. Okay, so let's close it off with our colon, and then let's go ahead and define each of these things. Now, one thing we need to do, the first thing we need to do inside of our constructor method, is that we want to inherit anything that wasn't otherwise specified in the warrior class. We want to bring in everything we can from the Glot class. And the way that you do that is by calling the init method of the Glot class. And there's a couple ways to do it, but this is the way I'm going to show you, which is you type in super, beginning and ending parenthesis, And so this refers to whatever the parent class is. So you could specify a specific class here, but in this case we only have one parent, so I'm going to use super. Then you call its init method, init, and you pass in the arguments that are required for that. So we're going to pass in name and clan. Okay, so we're actually calling the init function of Glot. And remember, when you actually call the init method, you don't pass in self when you use it. So we're calling the init method of the Glot class here. So we're not actually passing self as an argument. We're only passing name and clan. Okay. And the only other thing we need to do here is we need to specify the weapon. Self.weapon equals weapon. Okay. So let's go ahead and create some warriors. We've got, let's create warrior 1, and that's going to be a warrior, and his name is going to be Flagel, and he's going to be from the West Thicket clan, and Flagel swings a sword. That's his. That's what he's trained. He's trained at doing. Okay, so we've got a warrior created here, W1. Let's run our code. And let's go ahead and print out some information about our warrior 1. We did specify a weapon sword. Let's check and make sure that he's got his sword. Okay, warrior 1's got a sword. Warrior 1 has a name. It's Flagel, and so on and so forth. Okay, so so that's interesting, although the sword that we've assigned in this case is just a string for the word sword. It's not actually an object. So we can actually create a class here to make this a little more interesting. Let's create a class, a weapon class, and we can actually create different objects of weapons, different instances of weapons in our code. So I'm going to go up here to our class definitions, and let's define a new class called weapon. Okay, and let's go ahead and create our constructor method, def dunder init self. And so each weapon, let's say, has a name and it has a damage rating to it. Okay, and so we're going to go ahead and set self.name equal to name and self.damage equal to damage. So again, the particular instances of weapons will each have a name and their own damage attribute that will get saved in memory when we create it. Okay, so let's go down here, and before we create our warrior, let's create a weapon. Let's call it sword. And sword is going to be a particular instance of the weapon class, and its name is sword. And let's see, what would be a good sword damage? Swords, let's say, has a damage of 10. Okay. And now let's change our argument in our creation of warrior 1 here to just be sword, which would be the actual instance of the weapon class. And let's run our code, make sure we don't have any errors. Okay, looks good. Oops. Go to my console here. Clear that. And let's print out some information about warrior 1. So let's see, what is warrior 1's weapon? Ah, okay, so warrior 1's weapon is now itself an object. Okay, interesting. So now we can create different instances of weapons. We could create another weapon called a mace, and it's an instance of the weapon class that is a mace, and maybe it has damage of 12, something like that. And we could create another warrior called warrior 2, and his name is Kragon, and he's from North Thicket and he swings the mace. Okay, so now we have created different weapon objects, and then we have given those weapon objects to the different warriors that we've created. Okay, so that does it for video 3 in the BattleGlots tutorial series. So today we learned how to create a subclass and how a subclass can inherit attributes and methods from its parent. And in our next video, we're going to create an instance method inside of our warrior class to define what happens when one warrior attacks another Glot. So stay tuned for that. We'll see you then.